All right, welcome everybody to X Factor. Simon Clements, your host here. I'm here with New York football coach Michael Hendricks Sr. Michael is one of the top talent scouts in the state of New York. He's been working closely with us to identify talent from the Bronx specifically, but also the greater New York metropolitan area for the upcoming All-State game hosted at the University of Albany, July 9th through 11th. Michael, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Well, right now, I'm actually going on, I got to say about 22 years now of coaching. I've been coaching since 2004. My background is, I went to Richfield High School in Richfield, New Jersey. Graduated from there. Never really had the chance to get, recruited to college. So the only thing I really did out of high school is, I went straight to semi-pro. I played semi-pro for a few years. I also still today I play in the A7FL, which is the 7-on-7 non-pad tackle league. Just the fun things I like doing. Coaching is like more of my love because it's just more of me giving back, teaching what I learned growing up. From my high school coaches and rec coaches, and just giving back more to my community out here because I tell a lot of people like since I moved out here, not a lot of kids get a lot of recognition from New York. Like that, it's been a lot of different areas, and a lot of people don't respect New York football the way it should be respected, and we have a lot of athletes out here, that really doesn't get recognized a lot, and I feel like me being that person that I am, so dedicated and loving to this game, and really giving back to a lot of the kids. Like I want to have everybody, kind of be exposed out here in New York City. Because like I said, we're also a top tier program, just like any other state. I just feel we haven't gotten that chance yet to really display our talents. And, I feel the All-State game is, the best place to do things like that for our kids. So if I could get that chance to shed that light on these kids that don't have opportunities like that.
What youth team are you currently leading? And how are you recruiting players into that fold? Because I think in the city, it is a different battle than a lot of the other areas. So how are you putting these teams together and communicating with these families that football's a great opportunity for them to pursue? Because honestly, when I think about New York, at least the city, my mind goes to basketball.
Yeah, we all know it's a bad basketball town. Any park you go to, there's always a basketball court, but there's never really a lot of football fields out here. So, recruiting wise, it's a little bit hard, but at the same time, you get those kids that, that are basketball players that, have that passion and want to play football, but can't really find that team, and with me, I run, my football team, the Bronx Justice League. And, a lot of people asked us, asked me, why Justice League? And I had to explain to them, Justice League is just like the DC Heroes. You gather a bunch of superstars, and you put them together to make one team, and, you go and you battle, the greater good. And that's kind of what I did with a lot of these boys. A lot of these kids were in the parks, they were fighting, some were in gangs, some were, it's just going through a lot. Some had home stuff, and it was just more like, listen, man, I got to do this because this is the only way I can really save a lot of these kids, and I've had Justice League for going on 6 years now, and, I always told the players when we first started, in order to succeed, we have to take our hits. And, we got our butts kicked, for our first few years, but as the boys started trusting the process, trusting our coaching, started seeing what little things they had to do in order to get themselves there. It could be watching film or perfecting their craft, learning how to read the coverage, things like that. They started getting in tune. By year 3, we took that extra step, and year 4 we went in and we really started going in. And then, last year, this past fall, we had a hell of a season where, we made it all the way to the semifinals for 14U, and we played the number 12 team in Philadelphia, and we lost the heartbreaker. It was 19-16, but, I told the boys, and that team from Philadelphia came up to us, and they literally told us that, they respect everything from us, because for a team to only come to Philadelphia with only 16 kids compared to their 35 they had on the sideline and really take them that length, we got a lot of respect out of that. So the boys from there, they just been so locked in. It could be film study. Again, it could be them going to the gym or going to the field for about an hour, hour and a half. Sometimes I'll have to tell them go home because their parents are like, where are they? Well, they're at the field working out right now. So, it's just the dedication they have, especially my son, my nephew, a lot of the players, they all grew up together. They've been playing since 9U, and all the way now to 15U. So the chemistry's just been there, so they've taken their hits, they've given their hits, but, at this point, they're where they need to be. And I just feel there's a lot more for them all.
So it sounds a lot of this. Then you're kind of hitting on the community service aspect, like an opportunity to really provide a great environment to train, work out, be around peers who are as ambitious as they are, and identify closely with a program that affiliates itself with success. Is that fair?
Yes,
I
yes.
think that's really, I mean, it's really impressive, man, and certainly, a really special thing that you're doing. And I guess I'm kind of curious. So, do you see? I know that your son, Mikey, right, he's an eighth grader, or he just finished eighth grade.
He
So, what
graduated.
does that mean for your involvement with youth football going forward? Because Mikey's going to be going on to high school, right?
Mean, that's been the $1 million question since like our spring season ended, and like I've had a lot of people asking me like Mike, what are you gonna do like during going into the fall when Mikey starts. And I don't know, like coaching for 22 years, like I feel like I want to continue to do it, and it is my passion, it's my love, and it's like I can't just give it up. You know what I mean? I wanted to just take the year off to just, be a parent, support Mikey all year. But like even Mikey's telling me like that, you just continue Justice League. You know what I mean? Like, so many kids still want to play. You still have so much to do, so many kids to save. And, and it's just funny because just a few days ago, me and Mikey were coming home, walking back from shopping, and we saw a kid fighting in the park. And, Mikey was like, Dad, look, that kid looks, he looks like he gets pretty aggressive. So, I went up to him and I was like, listen, do you play football? He's like, I know how to play. So I asked him, I said, listen, I have my own football team. I am running, I'm thinking about doing a 12U division. He said he was 11 years old. So I told him I might do 12 years shit. How do you feel about playing football? And the first thing out of his mouth was when does practice start? You know what I mean? So it's like just hearing things like that, like certain kids want to do certain things only if that person finds them. You know what I mean? I'm guessing like he felt excited that day because just an hour after that, his mom called me. And I filled her in with all the info, so like now, like when I start workouts next week, like I was telling you earlier, for some of the boys out here, I'm gonna just, implement them, with Mikey and all of them, just so he can start learning, some of the patterns of what we do here, the drills, the playbook, or our route concepts, anything of his position. So I just like to get ahead of the game and really just try, like I said, save these kids, keep them out of gangs, keep them out of the streets, keep them from getting into trouble, trying to just stay on top of them academically. I'm very, very high when it comes to school because, a lot of the boys, they know my rules. If you don't succeed where you need to in class, like you cannot step on my field. Like that's just one of my main rules, and I'm very high when it comes to being disrespectful to parents. Like I'm very strict. A lot of the boys, like I said, the ones that have been with me for years have known like how I am. The ones that are like new and started catching on to like what we do now, they're understanding like Coach Mike's not being a mean coach. It's more about like he's just really trying to show us and prepare us for what's like ahead. So that's really what I do. I try to give them a little bit of an advancement from what I do now to where they're going to be in the next 4 years of their lives, going into college and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's huge. The younger that we're able to establish these habits, especially the motivation to follow the habits. I mean, I think that's what you're really hitting at, right? It's like if football can be the vehicle that allows an athlete to sort of, or allows a kid, I should say, before they're an athlete, just a kid, to focus their energy in a direction, there's so much benefit to that. Because the second that you have that sport, you have something to lose.
Yep.
And I think that, at the end of the day, when you got something to lose, you want to protect it. And so, does that change behavior? I think absolutely. One of the things we talk a lot to our kids at our events is, you know, when are you going to take yourself seriously? And if that's around sports, I think it's phenomenal. It doesn't have to be, but obviously we work in sports, so that's how we go. But it's like there's a day when it all clicks in some kid's mind that he's like, I have my own agency.
Yeah.
I can take myself seriously as a person, and that means that I need to do these things. Once that's in there, I love what you said about the academic piece. Well, that becomes easy because that's just another way that you're going to succeed in football is by succeeding in the classroom. And then you tie in, diet, you tie in workouts. I mean, it all just becomes this sort of feeder. Because how many minutes does the kid actually have the opportunity to play an actual game of football? It's like
Right.
very, very limited, right? And it's sort of everything else makes that moment possible, which
Yeah,
is
and
a theme that we come back to.
yeah, and I've asked the boys too, what I mean, because like recently, like last November, like after our 14th season was done, I got like I ended up getting a tragic call, and it was very like it was a very hurtful call because we actually lost the Justice League player last year to gun violence. Excuse me. I was actually home. It's really crazy because like we had just seen him 3 days before coming back from practice, and he was like, because like all of the boys on my team, they all call me Uncle Mike. And there's not one player on my football team that doesn't call me Uncle Mike. They all look at me as like an uncle. So like he saw us coming back from practice, and he's like, "Oh, Uncle Mike, I'll be back. I want to come work out. I'm going to school every day now. I'm not in the street no more. I really just started changing my life." And I just spoke to his mom too that night, and she's like, "Yeah, Tyson's going to school every day. He's actually getting A's and B's now. Like, he wants to come back on the field to get out of the street." And it just so happened like 3 days after that, like that Saturday night, we came back from like our game, and like I was up late night. I like to review film after the game, and like I just got a call from her, like screaming, like, the first thing she said was like, "Mike, they took my baby from me." And like, and I was like, I didn't know what was going on. And then when I turned on my phone to the news, is when I seen our player got killed. And like, our whole group chat just started crying. Mikey broke down because Mikey had just seen him the night before at McDonald's, so it was like, it hit him more because him and Tyson were very, very close. So like I always told the boys, like when that happened, what are your legacies going to be down the line? Like, what are you guys going to do? Like, how are you guys going to carry yourself? How are we going to move forward from here with all of the stuff that we witness out here in the Bronx? Because we all know the Bronx is a bad area for these kids, and I always tell them like the guns and everything that goes on is not the way we live our lives. And we have to start living our lives through football, and, from there, that's what I said every day. There's not one of the Justice League players that don't be together. They all travel together. They're always like on time. They're checking in with me. They're letting me know, even if they're under the tunnel, they lose service. Like they'll call me 30 seconds right after. "No, Coach Mike, we're still on the train." Like I just have that thing right now. I have to take my players home or just make sure they're in a group together because it's just so much, and I just like from here on out, I told the boys like becoming men, going into your men year, like senior year, when you guys become 18, you guys will look back at this day and see like the reason why I pushed you guys to where you guys needed to be, and so forth from there. So I just feel like, again, me being the mentor, the coach, the uncle, the person that I can to a lot of these kids, again, I just want to share everything with any coach out there, any program. Like, right now, us as coaches, man, we got to like really put our egos away and we got to save these kids, man. Like, it's just so much that goes on out here in a lot of different areas, not only New York. You have a lot of different states that have gun violence, and it's like these kids can't get saved if we, us coaches, don't have these ways of finding these kids to get them out of the streets. So again, if I could do that to help anything, that's what I do as a coach.
You brought up the Bronx Justice League. How many teams make up your league, and then how spread out are they across the boroughs of New York?
Well, we have a lot of teams in the Bronx besides myself. I unfortunately don't have the pleasure of really getting a lot of different divisions because, you have a lot of different top name teams out here that, end up getting like 200 to 300 kids, and they'll fill up every division. So it's like, it's hard for teams like the Justice League to get like a 10U or even a 12U. I had 12U to 4U one year, you know what I mean? But, as the years progress, you got a lot of these other top name teams, that get top high schools coming to their programs because they've been out more than like 10 years and stuff like that. So it's like, it's hard for me, but our play and the way I coach just really does our talking of how I get players to our program. Not saying I'm a cocky coach. I'm never a cocky coach. I like to be very humble. I'm a very, very humble coach. It's just that I feel the way that I coach and the way that I know I coach the kids' abilities is the reason why a lot of kids want to play for me and on my division, and like I said, I really only coach one division right now, which is 14U, and I get about, I gotta say, at least maybe 16 to 22 kids at the most every year, which is cool with me. I'm fine with that. But those 16 to 22 kids, they go out and they play 4 quarters of football. They buy into the process. They work hard. They come to practice every day. They watch film. We study our opponents. We learn, what defensive coverages they in, how their defensive linemen, if they use a rip move on a certain technique. And I try to teach certain things like that for them to understand because by the time they get to high school, when they get to their high school coach is going to be like, "How did you know all of this?" Or "How did you know that?" Now they can sit there and be like, "Well, our coach that we were with in youth football taught us this, for a long time." So it's very hard, but a lot of teams have a lot of different divisions out here. And there are a lot of good football teams out here. You have the Bronx Wolfpack, the Brooklyn Titans, the Bronx Buccaneers, you have the Westchester Untouchables, Queens Falcons, Greenpoint Spartans. A lot of those programs, they have those divisions, that can compete at every level. Justice League, on the other hand, we have one. But like I said, our one division is a killer in every league that we play. We compete every year. We either make it to the playoffs or we make it to the semis, or sometimes we make it to the championship. It might not go the way we want to go, but it's always a learning curve for us, and we just take it a step every year. And that's what that's what a lot of our programs out here try to do for our kids. Like, we just try to elevate them the best way that we possibly can, coaches.
What is the transition to high school look like then for you guys? Like, will all your boys go to the same high school? Are they recruited to go to different high schools? Do they go to private schools? Like, what is that? You've spent this time on development with this group of kids and are obviously, I think, based on what you said, the long-term goal sounds like, okay, we're training football players. Goal is to hand them to high school coaches, hopefully, that will continue their development, right? So how does that look on your end?
So as of right now, the Justice League, we this year, like I said, I had about almost close to 16, 22 kids around there for this year for 14 to 15U. Majority of them were eighth graders. So right now, I actually have about 8 Justice League players that just committed to APR Randolph High School.
Cool.
I also have another 6 Justice League players that are actually in APR Randolph right now. 3 of them playing varsity and 3 of them starting on JV. Some of my other players chose to take different paths. Some went to Stepinac, some went to Cardinal Hayes. Others went to different high schools like Mott Haven. You have Erasmus Hall. A lot of different players chose different paths. I try to keep the boys together as much as I can. To just keep the chemistry intact with them. So they're all looking out for one another in school, which is like why I'm kind of happy a lot of the Justice League players chose Randolph. Like my son in particular, Mike, while he wants to be around the team, they all made a pact together that they would finish our youth program from the time they started till now, and then go to high school together as the first youth team to play together for 4 years, but also at the same time trying to win a state championship together. So I always told the boys, like, if that was to happen, you guys are all together there, it could be the biggest storybook ending for you guys your senior year, because you guys came from a youth program that you guys played together for 5-6 years. You went into high school together. You kept the same chemistry, and you took it further. And that's something that, like, I could be more proud of than these kids do. My goal is to really wake up one day and turn on College Game Day Live, all of us, and you guys from this all state game can be like, hey, well, that's Mikey, that's Zayden, that's Andy, like those boys. We just seen them over here, in Albany. So to see them, on TV is, I ain't gonna lie to you, Simon, man. I told the boys already, like, if I even see that, like, I'm gonna break down, because, like, I felt as a coach, I did my job, getting them to where they needed to be. So, like, that's just really the goal. I just want them to be very good academically and, just take it to the next level.
Can you talk a little bit? I know there was just recently a New York 8th grade All-Star game. Can you just talk a little bit about that? And I think that Mikey got selected for that, right? And so there was
that game. Awesome, man. So the Moving to Change Academy 8th grade All-Star game is an event that's ran like every year for 8th graders transitioning to get ready for high school. This was the 5th year of the All-Star event, but this was like the biggest one yet they had this year, because there was a lot of 8th grade talent in this game, and it was Team Stars versus Team Elite. It started out like a very good beginning of like the first 2 series for Team Elite, but then Mikey and the boys decided to turn it up a level. We ended up winning 16-0. Mikey had an interception in the game before halftime. Zayden, he ran for 2 conversions. He also threw like a 40-yard pass downfield. Kai Lang, which is my running back from Justice League, he had about like a 25-yard run where he ran somebody over. Like, so a lot of the Justice League players had a lot of fun, but the one cool thing that was cool about it was like all of those kids from different programs coming together and like really becoming close friends. Like at the practices were intense. They were friends. They were friends before practice started. But once practice started, it was like, nah, we got to lock in, and that's what a lot of these kids did. And the atmosphere was awesome. Like, there was not a single empty seat that you couldn't see that wasn't filled with somebody at this event. The only thing that kind of killed it was that it started to downpour heavy in the 4th quarter, so they had to call the game. You know what I mean? But Team Stars ended up winning. I felt bad for Mikey because he did do his thing in the game, but he didn't end up with the defensive MVP. But I told him, your name alone being called on that monitor, and then you being on YouTube alone, and people seeing who you are, that's enough. You already put in your work. All you got to do is continue to do. I told all the boys, from Team Elite, from Team Stars, like, this was, earned for you guys. You guys earned this. You guys earned just coming here to come play in the All-Star. Like, you guys were literally hand selected to come play in this game. Out of 250 kids, 40 on each roster. That was 80 kids in total. 170 kids got denied, and 80 kids got picked. So this is where it shows that like your hard work paid off from the time you guys started playing football to now. And I just wanted to continue that way for all of that. So the All-Star game was like an awesome event. Can't wait to see it next year, to see what Justice League kids get picked next year for the event. Got a lot of, a few 7th graders coming back going into 8th grade. So like I said, we're gonna see how it it works out. But this is a definite awesome event for these kids in New York City. That's why I said the start of starting to get kids recognized in New York is the path of this 8th grade All-Star game that they're doing right now. So shout out to Moving the Chains for that.
Now you're getting ready to to join us up in Albany at the University at Albany for the 3-day All-State game. Can you talk a little bit about how you've approached your talent scout job and sort of working to connect within the New York area and identify kids that you think are worthy of coming up to Albany? How's that process been for you?
It's been okay so far. I've gotten some pretty good recruits that have registered. I have some that are definitely interested in registering to come up and play. As my Justice League players, they're excited and pumped up, to come out there ready. Especially Mikey Hendricks, they're ready to come make a big name out there for themselves. A lot of the other players that I've coached against, from the Queens Falcons players to the Greenpoint Spartan players, for some of the Long Island kids, the Staten Island kids, like those kids, they're very excited for it. Like I was telling you earlier, I got to connect with some of the coaches from the teams the players that are registered. I'm actually going to start a workout session with some of them next week, just so Zayden can start throwing with some of them, working on some handoffs. Linemen can work on, hand movements and stuff, just trying to get them acclimated. But, as I was telling you before, Mikey and Zayden, they've actually been watching the All-State game since you guys started the tournament. So they've been watching every state game that you guys have done just to get a feel, to study, the offenses, the defenses, the atmosphere, see what the atmosphere is like. They wanted to see what the rigs look like, the trophy. So, again, we gotta lock in, because we don't know if this team that we're playing, they're gonna come with their game. So, we gotta come with ours. So, but the word is, everybody thinks that side of New York kind of runs it. But I think, with Coach Mike coming out there in a few weeks, we might have to show that Downstate is the team that runs New York. So
hey, you're a lot from Buffalo, man. Buffalo talks big game.
Listen, they got to know who the Bronx and Manhattan and all. They got to know who we are, man. We are a fast, physical unit out here, man. We're just coming out there to play football, give you guys something excited to see with the Downstate New York players. See what talent we have out here. And again, it's a big, big blessing, Simon, for you guys to have us out in this event playing, for these kids to get exposure, their names out there. And this is an awesome thing you guys are doing, man. This is very cool right here. I've never really experienced something like this before. I've done different, all-star tournaments and, travel things, but nothing like this, man, where you get a combine and, you never know if you have a college, recruiter looking at you to, this is cool. You know what I mean? And like I said, this has all been the talk of Mikey and Zayden for weeks already. It's the All-State game, the All-State game, the All-State game. I need MVP. I'm going to get MVP. I'm going to get that. So it's just been a back and forth with them, to where me and my brother were like, listen, calm down, because there's 50 other kids too that are going to probably fight for this MVP like you. So, everything is work ethic, work ethic, craft, perfection. I like to steal that word from Coach Boone from the Titans. I'm gonna remember the Titans fan, big time, man. Buffalo better get ready, because we are coming.
Love that. Well, it's going to be, regardless, I think one of the cool things about the All-State game is, I hope when you put all these kids on the field together, you get an opportunity for them to just challenge themselves and to kind of see okay, this is the level of play. These are the expectations. You get a better sense of where you're truly at, especially when you're bringing kids from across the state, because, looking at that New York map, we really are. We're drawn all the way from Long Island through the Bronx, up the Hudson River Valley into Albany. We got kids from Syracuse, Rochester, over to Buffalo, and then we've even got some kids from the middle of nowhere up just south of the Canadian border. And literally, so the geography of this game is awesome. It is a true representation of New York State. You know what it reminds me of? In Mighty Ducks 2, when for some reason all the Mighty Ducks make the Olympic team, but then Tex comes from Texas and whatever. You know what I mean? The dude, Kenny Wu comes from Southern California, right?
That's my boy.
And still somehow the goalie's still the goalie. What's up with that? Anyway, Goldberg. And then Julie the Cat Gaffney. But anyway, like I think there's a little element of that, because I meet coaches from different parts of the state, and it's like you guys do rep, like you have different cultures, different attitudes, different thoughts, different approaches, but we all love football. And so we get all that together. And I think there's, yeah, that to me, that's what's really exciting and like compelling about the All-State game is like, because it's not just the coaches. I mean, the kids represent that too, right? And it's like they all get to come together, and yet we're playing a common sport. And there's rules here, and now we get to see, like, what are you made of? How do you approach things? And my hope is, again, I think despite all the competition, one of the things I've seen from all the games is that the kids leave with new connections. So like the chance for Mikey to leave with, contacts up in Buffalo or over in Syracuse or in Albany or Rochester or whatever. And just kids that he can track and follow online and like, what's he doing? And you know what I mean? Because these are the ambitious, hungry kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, and that's where, it's like at the end of the day, where's the bar? And sometimes, you have to go hang out with an elite group to realize, oh, the bar's actually there. Can I get there? Then you ask yourself that question, and so, some people look and well, it's too high up. I can't get there. And other guys look at it and just go, give me a pull up and I'm over. You know what I mean? And I think that's an exciting thing. So I'm really looking forward to coming out. I'm going to be at the New York game with you guys. So very excited to meet you in person. Very excited to work with Mikey. And just have a great 3 days up at the University of Albany because, that's the other thing. We're getting to train at a D1 field, D1 stadium for game day. I think it's going to be an awesome environment for the boys to get an exposure opportunity for sure.
Yeah. I know they were asking me too if any of the college players were coming, but I told them, I said, I don't know. You never know who shows up. You never know who's going to be at this event. This is the New York event. So, it's New York. So you never know who could pop out, find out about this. I've been promoting the game crazy myself. I'm not gonna lie. Like I've been kind of shooting it on IG. Telling people tap in. I told them like I'll let them know there's gonna be a live link, which obviously I see there is a live link now. So so everybody that knows Mikey Zayden and some of the Justice League play, they're all already gonna lock in. They already said it. Like July 11th, we're tuning in. Like just let us know what time you guys play, and we'll be locked in to support and comment and everything. So I told them, I said, it's very cool for New York. And like I said, this is actually cool that we're going live with this because now they get to see Mikey Zayden, some of the Justice League players, the Queens Falcons kids, Staten Island, Long Island kids, and they're like, but how didn't we know anything about this? Meanwhile, it was been promoted like crazy for me, you know what I mean? And this now, hence, here comes these numbers for next year. Oh, I got to get to the All-State game. I got to go this. So this right here is actually going to be awesome. Like I have a lot of the youth coaches going to lock in to watch this game, to get a feel for it, to see what the All-State game is like. And you never know, man. You might end up getting a bunch of different New York teams next year for this.
I hope so. I hope so. You guys have done an awesome job building the foundation for it, and I think you're right. At the end of the day, this is our first time in New York. We're looking at around 200 players coming in for the event. You know what I mean? So we got a great group of kids coming together. I think we're building a really great a really great coaching staff that's going to have an opportunity to, there's a lot of learning to be done. And, at all the other All-State games, I think that's the biggest takeaway for me is just if you give a kid an opportunity to be serious and you've got the right coach there, there's just so much to learn. And most of these kids want to, they wouldn't be in this room unless they wouldn't be on this roster unless they really wanted to succeed. And so, I think that's one of the biggest things is just an opportunity to go be around like-minded individuals who love football and are passionate about it and want to learn. If that's an environment that you're going to grow in regardless. You know what I mean? And I think that's what it's all about.
Definitely. That's why I said I told you I've been on film every day, breaking down 4 bases, defenses, right? So just getting everything prepared for out there because I kind of want to be on a up-tempo type game when we get out there. I want to be on a fast step. And that's what I've been teaching the boys and coaching them. So, they're used to up-tempo. But like I said, if I can get the other boys intact, then you're going to see a real nice show on your hands. I'm telling you, Mikey and Zayden are going to definitely be on a big show for you.
Well, I'm hoping that, the up-tempo to me means more plays. More plays means more opportunities for kids to get to be seen. And, obviously one of the things that we want to make sure at the All-State game is, every kid who's nominated gets an opportunity, so we want to make sure that they have that chance to play and succeed. And it sounds like you're going to be running an offense that's going to let that happen, which is awesome.
Yeah. I like to do like one of our old leagues that we played in. We have what was called an NPR. So an NPR was like, you could have certain players play, but the entire roster has to play no matter what. You know what I mean? And I don't really follow NPR. I have my own NPR. All the kids are gonna play. You know what I mean? Every kid gets in, win, lose, or draw. Like these kids are playing in this game for a reason, and they all need to get recognized. They all need to display their talent. You know what I mean? And like I said, this right here, what you're doing, sheds that bar for them to do that. Especially with the combine and practices and the game. You know what I mean? Like I'm just like I'm excited to see them go in and just perform in front of you guys. Like I was just like I told Mikey earlier today because he was asking me if we were gonna go work on his 40 time, and I told him like we'll go this week. I'll start showing you the actual way to come off your 40 and start get going. So he's like I said, he's preparing himself for the shuttle. The vertical, the 40. He's doing all that. Like I told you, Mikey's a big Jeremiah Smith and a Mecca Buka fan, so he watches every single thing they do. I'm talking about like from route running to feet work to the hand movement. Like he just found out now that Chris Carter used to do that stretch with his hands when he bent his fingers all the way back. Mikey's doing that stretch now. You know what I mean? So it's like he just implements so much into his game now, Simon, that it's just exciting to see like what he's done. Because as long as we have that mentality, I don't think we could be beat with that. So I'm with it.
Oh man, I'm so excited to see it. Yeah, it's gonna be an awesome weekend up in Albany, and like I said, I'm just excited to get a lot of the guys I've been working on this New York game with now. We've got about 3 months working together in, and I just think it's gonna be cool to kind of see it all come together for sure. I think we got a great program set up and a great location for it. I love how central it is to New York. Like I do think at the end of the day, we talked about where to host the game, and frankly, it's about as equidistant as you're going to get. I mean, the Long Island kids and the Buffalo kids, chance to go to a D1 stadium and really perform at a high level. I think there's just so much good in that it's going to be really, really fun to watch. And it's, win or lose, regardless, I think everybody's going to grow. And that's what the All-State game really should be about. So
everybody's going to be friendly. There's going to be a lot of friendships. I can almost promise you that. A lot of these kids are going to exchange IG, Snapchat, that they're going to be in touch for years. So I'm actually cool about that. I'm excited about that to see that.
Cool, man. Well, look, Coach, it's been cool to catch up. I'm so excited, like I said, to meet you and work with you. I really can't thank you enough. You've done just so much to get this started in New York, and I think it is just a start. Something I have to keep in mind. This is year one. We have just great potential for the future working together, and but it starts here, and you've been a big part of that. So I just want to shout out to you for the passion and joy and love that you have for the game and for the growth in the future. Finding guys like you is what makes my job worth it. So
I appreciate you guys having me, man. Thanks.
So
see you guys in 2 weeks, man. Trust me. We'll definitely chop it over when we get up there, man. We're gonna
absolutely. All right, Michael. Well, okay. Thank you from X Factor for joining us, and we'll see you next time.